this closing out, this kind of final statement in the letter to the Hebrews is part of a letter that is often misunderstood because it kind of gets into some mystical things, but as I've mentioned throughout my preaching on the letter to the Hebrews, that there's also kind of this theme of home that runs throughout that letter as well. And this benediction kind of builds on this idea of home by talking about the company of faith that we are in. I talked a few weeks ago about this idea of the cloud of witnesses, the great cloud of witnesses that's mentioned in the letter to the Hebrews, and how we, even here among us, are part of that great cloud of witnesses. And this benediction speaks of the family, the companionship of the community of faith as part of our home, part of our spiritual home. A place where we can find constant reassurance in the faithfulness of Christ. Today's passage picks up on the theme of faithfulness, both God's faithfulness to the people of the covenant and our faithfulness to God as expressed through discipleship to Jesus. That's the sacrifice that's mentioned at the end of that benediction. And it implores us to express our faith through loving relationships, through the expression of mutual love. The good news in this benediction is that by giving such love to others, by expressing that mutual love, we cultivate within our own spirits and in the spirit of the world a much-needed compassion. We restore trust and respect where they've not been just broken, but in some instances demolished by those who adhere to the false gospel of self-serving ambitions and who put their faith almost entirely in money. This benediction in Hebrews reminds us that we are more than that. That God has created us to be reflections of divine grace and compassion. We are encouraged to avoid taking people for granted, whether they're strangers, those unlikely angels among us, or the invisible marginalized, those who are in prison. And within that category of those who are in prison, I'd also suggest that we include those who are imprisoned by addiction and our most intimate relations. That's why there's that mention, that reference to the marriage bed. For all people are beloved of God. We should take no person for granted. This reminder of our capacity for love and grace is followed by the interesting and I would suggest not coincidental placement of a notable warning regarding the love of money. It's a warning against placing the value of money over and above the value of people and of relationship with God. It's a warning against putting more faith in the power of money than in the power of God to provide lovingly and faithfully for whatever it is that we should need. And it's a reminder of all those times, whether it's the story of our community of faith as is recorded in Scripture, or the stories that are shared within this congregation's great cloud of witnesses, that God has shown up to make a way out of no way. God has provided much more generously than we could have imagined. If only we would have faith in each other, if only we would have faith in God's faithfulness. And finally, there's a restatement of that mysticism that I mentioned that kind of runs through Hebrews. The passages of the letter that kind of granted the reputation for being a little difficult, for being a little bit impenetrable, because of the ways that this letter refers over and over again back to rituals of the Jewish temple, specifically rituals related sacrifices, where those rituals are alluded to, they're there to remind us that Jesus is the perfect sacrifice. Because Jesus is not only, in the letter of Hebrews, the priest that presides over the sacrifice, but Jesus is also both parts of the sacrifice, the lamb and the goat, that fulfills both parts of the atonement, the atoning sacrifice. And it's something that I went into at great length during our Tenebrae and Good Friday service, and I'm not going to recapitulate that again because that was probably one of the longest sermons that I delivered. This one will be a little briefer just because we're serving communion today, but I do want to point out how this benediction does refer to Jesus as the perfect sacrifice and also the priest who presides over the sacrifice. It reminds us that now that Jesus has so perfectly enacted and fulfilled the atoning sacrifice, we're no longer bound to repeat such rituals. However, we are expected to cultivate and express our gratitude for the self-sacrifice of God on the cross by doing good and sharing what we have with all of those whom God claims as part of the household. And that includes the stranger and the imprisoned, whether it is physically imprisoned or imprisoned by addictions, our loved ones, and the community of the church, which is our spiritual home. And we remember that sacrifice whenever we show up together to celebrate the communion which we're doing today. So we're remembering that sacrifice, and communion is reminding us to not continue sacrifice in the traditional sense, in the old sense that's referred to in Hebrews, but by doing good and sharing what we have with those in need, the stranger, the imprisoned, our loved ones, and the community of the church. In a sense, what this benediction is reminding us to do is to be grateful for the faithfulness of God and to be good stewards of that boundless blessing by being as faithful to one another as God is to us, regardless of how broken our spirits may be, and to show hospitality to strangers as though things